they would wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I gently rise and I softly call, good night and joy be with you all.
Who was Ronnie Drew?
Who was Ronnie Drew?
For the best part of half a century, Ronnie Drew entertained the people of Ireland and the world as a singer, an actor, a storyteller, and a legendary character. He achieved international recognition and success as a performer, but for many he remained, above all, the quintessential Dubliner.
They were distinctively Dublin. They were associated with Dublin. They were part of Dublin. Ronnie was part of Dublin.
Ronnie's appeal could cross the generations as well as other frontiers.
Well, he was a man, you know, he was a man, you know, there was no around about that, yeah?
I found him a most generous character.
A rough exterior, but really kind in heart, you know.
Even to the very end, he'd still be my hero.
If you line them up like the hardest men in show business or the hardest men in rock and roll, just think of all the most obnoxious, swaggering rock singers, and it's a girls' choir next to Ronnie Drew.
It's hard now to imagine what the traditional music scene was like in Ireland 50 years ago.
There was almost a kind of an apology for singing old ballads, and they were presented in a very genteel, kind of parlour-like setting.
Traditional Irish music, certainly as presented by RTE, tended to be reserved and staid and extremely polite.
They were all kind of very nice kind of people, in that they had jobs and they had, you know, played fiddle in the evening and, you
Civil
know,
servants.
very nice people, but weren't really taking any chances, you know.
Ronnie introduced a voice that was not only original, but shocking.
And the first time I heard his voice, I was totally shocked. I couldn't believe that a human being could render a voice like this.
As down that glen came McAlpine's men, with their shovels slung behind them. Was in the pub that...
His voice has been described as the sound of coal being scraped across the floor.
They sweated blood and they washed down the mud with pints and the quarts of beer. And now we're on the road again with McAlpine's views of air.
I think there was something that he discovered he had naturally when he opened his mouth to speak or to sing. This is the sound that came out.
When you heard him, you'd think he was about 7 foot.
No money if you stop for rain. McAlpine's God was a well-built hod. Your shoulders put a bits and seared. And woe to he went to look for.
It's the voice of a nation and all the road miles that nation has. It's all our anguish, all the melancholy. It's not all explained by the rain and the Brits. But it's all in there. It's all in his voice.
What Horseface said when he saw him dead, well, it wasn't what the rich called prayer.
The problem with the ballad tradition can be sentimentality. His just sort of stoicism in the face of it, not running with the motion, but actually countering the motion. That's his power as a singer.
I've worked till the sweat has had me bet with Russian check and hold.
This voice that he sang in, yeah? it was like he was singing to you like he was talking to you, you know what I mean?
I've grafted hard, and I've got to make hard, and many a gagger's missed across my ears. If you played your life, don't join, by God, with McAlpine, you believe.
Ronnie's first group had been formed in a Dublin pub.
I think it was Ronnie that invited me over to a place called the Dubliners, because there wasn't much at the time in that side of town.
Back in the early 60s, O'Donoghue's, like most other Dublin pubs, did not permit singing or music to be played on its premises. But that was all about to change.
And one night, Barney McKenna and myself asked Paddy O'Donoghue, it was Christmas, around Christmas, could we play one song? Just one song, see, you know. And it hasn't stopped since.
And can you remember what that one song was?
I can't actually, to tell you the truth, but
Could you not make up something?
yeah, but probably Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah.
Right, Finnegan's Wake, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So it was Finnegan's Wake.
Wake, yeah.
Whack full of dough when you dance to your partners around the floor with your fellas shake. Isn't it the truth? I tell you, lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake. One morning Tim was rather full.
Ronnie's ballad group soon recruited another extraordinary and charismatic singer who had just returned from London.
See, I had already met Luke at the International Bar just after he'd come home from England. And we got into conversation and kind of hit it off. I said to Luke, we go up to Donoghue's, you know, come up and have a drink.
Ronnie's group began to attract attention, perhaps as much for their attitude and appearance as their music.
And Mrs. Finnegan called.
Soon they were in demand all over the city.
Then piped the
We, generally speaking, weren't looking for work or looking for, we had no ambition to be.
What were you looking for?
We were all pretty much labelled.
Looking for attention?
Well, no, I don't think, I think.
Or looking for friendship? What were you looking
yeah,
for?
we were probably looking to belong to something, I suppose.
Yes, exactly.
And
looking to fit.
Looking to fit somewhere, because like all my life I'd never fitted in anywhere, you know. And so we used to play there, you know, meet, and then it just became a thing we did, you know.
How will your old one?
There was no formal leader of the band, but Ronnie usually appeared as its front man.
Always well dressed. Like, he'd mastered that sort of, like, you know, like, good suit, like, you know, trim beard and all the rest of it, yeah? And then, like, he looked like he'd slept in his dustbin for a few minutes. And the rest of them looked like they'd slept in dustbins all night, you know? Because you always look smarter than the rest of them, you know what I mean? Yeah? He was always the front man, yeah?
The band was still called the Ronnie Drew Ballad Group, something that made Ronnie feel somewhat uneasy.
Ronnie didn't somehow like to have, I think you'd have heard to it as the responsibility in case something would go wrong, to be pointing the finger of accusation at him.
Ronnie wanted a new name for the band. It came from James Joyce's book Dubliners, which Luke Kelly happened to be reading at the time.
He just said, why don't we call it the Dubliners? Right. And that's how quick it was.
Oh, as I went home on Monday night, as drunk could
The song that gave the Dubliners their big breakthrough caused some local controversy.
I think there was probably a bit of an element of rebellion in everything we did, and her attitude was very much like, take us or leave us, this is the way we are.
Ah, you're drunk, you silly old fool, still you cannot see. That's a lovely sow that...
7 Drunken Nights was banned by RTE. The song could be played off Gaeilge, but the English version was judged unfit to be heard by Irish ears.
Grown people still ask me, who was the 2 nights, you know?
Yeah, I deeply suspect there wasn't another 2 verses.
No, it's just, I mean, it was a fun, as I say, a whimsical song, you know? A bit of fun, you know? Like, it was sort of thing you would have heard in the 30s in Ireland. Burlesque, you know. It was actually more fun working out, you know, what
might have been.
What might have happened.
What your man got up to at the end of the bed.
What we knew happened in the end, you know.
And as I went home on Friday night,
as drunk could be. I saw a head upon...
Despite RTE's ban, or perhaps because of it, the song entered the Irish charts, and with the help of this rather strange video, it served to establish the Dubliners' reputation outside Ireland.
It opened up a whole audience in Holland, Germany, the Nordic countries. So we ended up from then just touring Germany, Holland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and eventually went everywhere.
This was the era of so-called swinging London.
You really got me going. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah.
But Seven Drunken Nights entered the UK top 10, and the Dubliners even appeared on top of the pops, alongside more fashionable groups like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones and the Kinks. Can you remember the performance of Seven Drunken Nights on top of the pops?
I remember particularly other bands who were on top of the pops at the time looking at us as though like 4 or 5 vagrants had suddenly descended on the studio, you know.
That was an accurate description, probably.
Probably.
Did you get the same attention from the young mini-skirted ladies that the boys and the Kinks might have gotten?
No, I'm afraid not.
Oh.
No, we were too much in a rush to get out of the place to get to the pub, and there was a lot of drinking went on, you know.
You're all gargling your heads off.
Oh, gargling our heads off. And it was like a party that went on for about 20 years, you know. It all became very instinctive. Like one knew who followed another and who joined in or who didn't join in. Luke, I must say, was incredibly generous with songs and things. He would say to me, "No, you sing that song," you know. You know, a song that I would have thought that Luke would have wanted to sing himself, you know. He would say to me, "No, you sing that song." Or if he had too many that were going too well and I had a few that weren't going well, he'd say, "Sing this one," you know what I mean? Which I thought, you know, was very generous, you know. Very generous way of behaving.
A sweet bad look to the waves washed to our island. The hooker of the hammer-faced Viking and gold.
From the start, there was a strong sense of mutual respect and generosity between the band's members, and they each had their moments in the spotlight.
Jolting by Wellington's monument, our notorious hippopotamus, when some bugger let down the back strap of the omnibus, and he caught his death of Fusiliers with his rent and his rears, give him 6 years.
So there was a good brotherhood between
There was actually, yeah, a good brotherhood.
Ronnie was just at the start of his career when he met the love of his life, a young woman called Deirdre McCartan. You remember when you first kissed her?
Not going to tell you about that.
But you can, though.
Oh, I could if I wanted to, but I'm not going to.
You don't have to, but I'm glad to know that you can remember it.
Oh, I can remember, yeah.
They came from very different backgrounds, and it may have seemed like a match that could never work, but it did.
I don't think I've come across any couple that were as in love with each other. They were hugely supportive of each other and very much in love right up until the end.
Deirdre became part of a world that could be raucous and uncertain, but was never dull.
There'd be many parties in the house.
God, yeah, and they gave great parties. They really did.
Over the years, Deirdre proved well able to cope with Ronnie's somewhat unconventional character.
I think that was something that my mother loved about him as well, and that if he decided that he wanted to do something, you know, like if he wanted to go to New York and become a painter, I think she would have supported him completely.
For more than 40 years, she remained at Ronnie's side.
And now, live from New York, Ed Sullivan. could be more appropriate than for Sullivan from County Cork to open our St. Patrick's Day show with 5 bearded Irishmen from Dublin. Ronnie Drew.
As the years progressed, the Dubliners travelled the world. The pressures of touring have broken many a good band, but it seemed to bring the Dubliners even closer together.
We were like a family of brothers in a way, you know. The group became just more than a musical group. It was almost like an extended family in a way.
In the days I went to sporting, I was never tired of sporting. To an alehouse or a playhouse, and many's the house beside.
I have in my bathroom a picture of the Dubliners signed to me. And they just look like the best rock and roll band ever. They kind of look like the Band or something. In the end, you know, to tell a great band, it's not just about the noise that they make, it's kind of how they stand together.
Well, instead of digging for 80s, I'll be digging loose of gold.
Success brought the Dubliners to prestigious venues, such as London's Albert Hall. It was a location that would have daunted many musicians, but Barney McKenna wasn't easily impressed.
We had to do sound checks and things which we weren't used to, you know. And so we all went over to do sound check, but no sign of Barney. You see, we were all a bit nervous. So Barney eventually arrives, who doesn't know how to spell nerves, you know. And as he's getting the microphone ready, he's looking into it and he starts to look up, you know. And he's looking up, and if you're in the Albert Hall, you just seem to keep looking up. You know, it's so,
like the Colosseum.
So high, you see. And eventually when he reaches it, he says straight into the microphone, "My Jesus. The best opening you could ever have for a show. The place went mad."
Oh, there was an old woman and she lived in the woods.
Ronnie spent the best part of 30 years touring the world with the Dubliners. His career took him away from Dublin and his young family for many weeks at a time.
If he felt any shortcomings as a father or as a husband, I'd say it probably came from a feeling of having been away a lot, maybe in the early years, and also having had, you know, at times quite a lively social life.
For all his touring, Ronnie took the responsibilities of his family very seriously.
When he would go away for sort of 6 to 8 weeks at a time, but when he would come home, you know, he was very sort of full on. We'd go off on drives and go out for family lunches on a Sunday, and you know, he was very involved when he was home, so there was no sense of not knowing him or him not being around.
They're unique, they're absolutely crazy too. Will you welcome them? The Dubliners!
The Dubliners became a sort of Led Zeppelin of Irish folk music, with a reputation for hard living on the road.
As I was going over the far Kerry mountains, I met with Captain Farrell and his money he was counting. I first released me Mr. I then refused to be regular. 6 stand and the more power you are, the more the sailor mushering.
Over the years, the group became associated with the conspicuous consumption of alcohol.
He had some of the best times in his life through drink, and that he would never have had some of the experience that he'd had or met some of the people that he'd met had he not been at the party for 35 years.
There was always a professional awareness that there was a level beyond which we shouldn't go, you know, but The safety valve didn't work a couple of times, and there were a few occasions when we went over the top.
To be ready for the slaughter, mushering.
I was a non-drinker at the time, and I still had my good day job in the ESB, and wherever we were down the country, I was conscious of having to get back home and in for work the next morning. So I'd be always anxious to get them out of the bar and get on the road, but of course they didn't give a damn what time they got home or whether they got home at all. There was one night I thought I was being very clever when I saw no sign of the bar closed, and I gave the barman a tip of a £5, which was a good lot of money at the time. I said, for Christ's sake, will you close the bar after the next round? I want to get home. So the bar didn't close after the next round or after the next round, and on the way home Ronnie was sitting beside me, and I said, Jesus, he was some louser, that barman. I gave him a £5 a couple of hours ago to close the bar. And Ronnie said to me, I knew what you're up to. He said, I gave him a tenner to keep it open.
Eventually, Ronnie realised that the periods of heavy drinking had simply gone on for too long. How did you make the decision to give it up? Or did somebody make it for you?
No, I just kind of decided, you know, that it was all too much. And I was getting older, and, you know, I was living at home here, and, you know, it was all different. I mean, years ago you were running around with guys and your wife be coming out with you, and you know what I mean, and all that, you know. But now it was kind of, you know, meant going out on your own, sort of, you know. And it wasn't so enjoyable. It wasn't the gang to be drinking with, you know what I mean?
There were casualties along the way. First, Kieran Burke, and then Luke Kelly.
I must away now. I can no longer tarry. This morning's tempest I have to cross. I must be guided without a stumble into the arms I love the most. And when he came to his true love's dwelling.
As the band entered its third decade on the road, it seemed that the years of hard living had finally caught up with Luke. This came to a head in 1980 when he collapsed on stage during a performance.
Luke was standing beside me and he began to shake, you know. And the next thing that was it.
What did you think when he went down?
I thought he was scared, you know what I mean, first, you know. And then, you know, we brought him to the hospital. It turned out to be a brain tumour.
Wake up, wake
Luke continued to appear with the Dubliners for several years after he became ill. But this was his last television performance.
Wake up, love, and let me in, for I am tired, love, and oh so weary.
Luke Kelly died in a Dublin hospital in January of 1984.
It's just a dreadful feeling that you look down and you see this person is dead, and the realization hits you. And it's like, you know, it's like a thump. And you just have to accept it. And you sort of just walk away. There's nothing else you can do. I mean, I can't go into explaining feelings like I was crying, I was this, I was that, I was the other. Because it all happens so quick, it just, you know, it happens. And, you know, I just felt awful. It's the best I can say.
I must be guided without a stumble into the arms I love the most.
When I
winning streak dream ticket scratch card. Get 3 stars together and you could be on the new TV game show.
Sorry, I've actually just won €100,000 instantly.
Thanks, guys. We'll take it from here.
Plus there's €500,000 to be won on the TV game show.
I woke up this morning, hated to get out of bed, but I called up the weatherman.
Isn't it funny how you let yourself run out of lots of things?
Yes, it's a good day.
But you never let yourself run out of bachelor's beans.
Oh, moving along. Yes, it's a good day. How can anything go wrong?
Life would be empty without bachelor's beans. New standards, new tests.
Hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice were squealing in my prison cell, and the old triangle went jingle jangle.
This is perhaps Ronnie's best-known song. It was originally meant to be sung inside a prison. After one night's hard drinking in Derry, Ronnie woke up to find himself inside a real cell, and Barney McKenna was in the one beside him.
Get up, you bowsy.
And just at 4:30 in the morning. We've been in the cell since 2 o'clock. While Ronnie's sitting on the edge of the bed at the waking up. He caught me going by, Barney, come here. Where are we? So we're in Derry. Oh, we're still in Derry? Yeah, I said, no, Ronnie, you're not in a hotel. See, you're in jail, Ronnie. We're in jail. We're in what? So we're in the Strand Road, RUC, jail. The car is outside, everything is all right. Now I said, you know what you'll do now, Ronnie? You, he says. You were driving, so do you know what you'll do now, Ronnie? Sing the old triangle now, you bollocks.
Long time ago in Ireland, ladies and gentlemen, we were beleaguered. Nice word, that, I like that. By English judges.
The Dubliners included a number of Irish rebel songs in their original repertoire. These were a staple of folk groups of that period and had proved popular with audiences.
There's a song about a fellow who went to English in 1939. Oh, when first I came to London in the year of 39.
But the temptation must have been huge to throw in the IRA.
It was.
Because it was a no-brainer. You won an audience with it.
Exactly. And there was a certain IRA songs that we did sing which were funny. Like at the time, say the old alarm clock was funny, you know.
Well, next morning down by Marlborough Street, I caused no little stir. The IRA was busy and the telephone did whir. Said the judge, I'm going to charge you with the possession of this machine. And I'm also going to charge you with the wearing of the green. Well, says I to him, Your Honour.
All this was to change when Northern Ireland erupted into bitter sectarian conflict. Even comic rebel songs seemed to have lost some of their humour.
But I remember in 1969, I said I wouldn't sing another rebel song because of the trouble that was in the Northern Ireland, because that would be my contribution to.
And did you say that to the rest of the lads?
Yeah.
And what was the reaction?
Well, they didn't mind because they weren't all...
You weren't a rebel band.
They weren't a rebel band, but we didn't depend on rebel songs.
And was Luke happy with that, was he?
Yeah. Because while I was would be a Republican at heart, but when little children start getting killed and, stuff like that, I just didn't want to know,
How did the audience react to that? Because everybody...
I don't think they even noticed, didn't they?
Ronnie was not the only one who was sceptical of Irish folk groups that played the rebel card in their stage acts.
I was always a little suspicious of the kind of faux nationalist folk thing. I was very relieved to meet Ronnie Drew once in, I think it was the first time we ever met him in Germany. And I don't know, it was Larry asked him about some very, I won't mention their name, but some very rah-rah...
Rifles of the IRA.
Kind of band. And Ronnie just was drinking a pint, and he just said, "I'll tell you what I think of them. You want to know what I think of them?" And he just poured the pint into a potted plant, full pint into a potted plant. "That's what I think of them." He says, "We're bigger than that, the Irish. We're bigger than that. We're bigger than division."
Dubliner, you say? Rich, you say?
As the years passed, Ronnie seemed to become the unofficial voice of his native city.
Dublin has lots of characters, and normally the Dublin characters are people that are looked down on, and they're out there on the streets, like they're Bang Bang or Johnny Forticoats or something like that. I think Ronnie had a totally different view. I mean, the distinctive dub accent, whether it was a dub accent or whether it was a cement mixer or whatever, but it was known as the dub accent.
Wherever he went, Ronnie seemed most at home in Dublin, completely at ease with the city and its people. He was recognised everywhere he went, including some of the most unlikely places. On one memorable occasion, it seems he was even recognised by an exotic bird in Dublin Zoo.
Each time he went by, the bird, Judy, said, "Hello, Ronnie Drew." So he said to me, did you hear that bird saying hello to me? And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, do you not think it's a bit odd that a bird knows who I am?" I said, "Oh, everybody knows who you are, Dad."
Well, the Queen, she came to calling us, she wanted to see all of us. I'm glad she didn't fall on us, she's heavy and stone. Mr. Me, Lord Mercy, she has already got to show to me. Why no, Mum, there's some more to see. Pogues, and he took her up to Monto. He took her up to Monto, Langaroo. Good night to you.
Over the years, Ronnie had acquired many fans outside Ireland.
When I was in the European Council, Gerhard Schroeder was a huge fan. Gerhard Schroeder had seen them as a student in Dublin in the 60s, in the early 60s, in Donoghue's.
The Chancellor of the German Federal Republic used the excuse of an official visit to Ireland to hear Ronnie Drew sing again.
When he was coming over, he asked, was it possible that could he go to Donoghue's? I contacted Ronnie. Ronnie gathered up the gang, those of them were there, had a night for Gerhard.
Needless to say, a few pints were taken.
He was a good Guinness man, Gerhard. At about 11, we all walked out, as you would walk out at 11 after being there for a long night. And it was a brilliant, brilliant night. And he floated back to Germany as President of Europe, and it was a really great night.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, especially over from London to join with us and pay tribute to the Dubliners. Here's a number from the Dubs with the Pogues.
In the late 80s, the Dubliners seemed able to reinvent themselves and win over a whole new generation of fans.
On the 4th of July, 1806, we set sail from the sweet cove of Cork. We were sailing...
The union of the Pogues and the Dubliners seemed somehow inevitable.
It was just like meeting somebody like that you'd been living away from for a long time. You know what I mean? It was the same. It wasn't quite the same with the rest of them, but with him it was, you know? Someone who's always been in your life, you know.
Well,
The two bands were able to create a unique energy, and their collaboration proved hugely popular.
I find McGowan a very, very intelligent, bright man. I think he's a poet, actually, you know.
There was our Mickey Cute, who played hard on his flute when the ladies lined up for a set. He would tootle with skill for each sparkling quadrille, till the dancers were fluted and bent.
There was very little rehearsal, you know. We just joined, got a key and away with us, you know. And it just seemed to work.
Because we've got one heck of a good show for you tonight. In the studio, we have Curiosity Killed the Cat. We've got Ruby Turner. We've also got the Fine Young Cannibals.
And I'm dead made up because at number 21 this week with the Irish Rover, it's the Pogues and the Dubliners.
More than a quarter century had passed since Ronnie and the rest of the Dubliners had last appeared on Top of the Pops.
On the 4th of July, 1806, we set sail from the sweet Cove of Cork. We were sailing away.
Who was more dangerous, you fellas or the Dubliners?
The Dubliners any time, but I mean the combination was pretty good as well.
A close relationship developed between Shane McGowan and Ronnie.
I used to try not to give a shit, but everybody would get nervous, yeah?
We had 1 million bags at a best layer rags. We had 2 million barrels of stone.
So sometimes I got nervous, you know, right, you know. And as everybody knows, I had a few drinks to settle my nerves, and you know, I'm not apologising for it, yeah?
7 million barrels of parts. We had 8 million slides around blind horses' heads and the whole of the Irish Rover.
To me, he always shows a great respect, and I have no problems with him at all. Okay, like anybody else, when he's a bit drunk, you steer clear, I steer clear, people steer clear of me if I'm drunk, you know what I mean?
He was cock of the walk, and he rolled the Danes under and over.
He just sort of used to talk me through songs on stage when I'd forgotten the bloody words and things, and nobody had noticed.
Turn 9 times around, and the poor old dog was drowned. Ah, so the Irish Rover.
The collaboration with the Pogues wasn't the last time that Ronnie worked with other artists.
He felt the need to express himself and to not be straitjacketed.
Ronnie continued to confound expectation throughout the past decade, recording with artists as diverse as Ja Wobble and Eleanor Shanley.
And he was also a bit of a non-conformist, and he liked to rebel a bit.
What kind of air are we to breathe when there's none to take in?
For some artists, singing with Ronnie seemed like the chance to work with a legend.
I was touring with Dubliners in Germany, and Ronnie was with the Dubliners. And we're on a bus, and I was completely in awe of all this touring. It was my first time to Germany, and Ronnie got in on the bus, and this was my hero. And he came in and sat down beside me, and I said, "Hello, Ronnie." I said, "Isn't this lovely, you know?" And I was looking at it, and Ronnie says, "Ara, what is it? Only threes and more threes, love." And that was my introduction to Ronnie Drew.
Listen to the likes of me and you. What do we tell the children when they start to ask us why?
He may have grown older, but Ronnie had lost nothing of his edge.
The whole thing dry.
He would let people know where he stood. He'd let people know what he thought. There was no act.
And what kind of rain will fall on the land that's dead and gone? What kind of flower?
I remember a woman coming up to him one day and saying, "Ronnie, I love your gigs. Could I have my photograph taken with you?" "You can." "Can I have your autograph?" "You can." She says, "Oh, I'd love to see your gig sometime. I'd love to see your gig." And he turned around and he says, "Funny how in 40 years, you never got to see me gig.
Just a few years ago, Ronnie and Deirdre celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary.
I always felt that they were two very strong individuals that had a partnership, and it was based on respect for each other.
And the screaming of brakes, the parting has come.
We just seemed to be quite happy together. And I mean, I had huge respect for her, and I think she had respect for me. And
do you regret anything?
I mean, when I was drinking heavily, you know, I don't know how she put up with it, but she did.
Why do you think she did?
Well, I was hoping it was because she still loved me.
Yeah.
Because I loved her.
That's the only reason, isn't it? There could be no other reason.
Could be no other reason, no other sane reason.
Sadly, at this time, both Ronnie and Deirdre were diagnosed with cancer. Deirdre died a few months before I last interviewed Ronnie.
I had great love for her, and I hope she had for me. And as you know, she only died a few months ago.
I know that.
And it's a little hard to talk about at times, still. But
you're on your own now, without her now, and that must be.
It is. I'm only beginning to come to grips with it now, you know.
Do you think about it?
I do, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think about it a lot. But I have to try and get on with life. And, I mean, she's gone now, so there's nothing I can do, but... do
you talk to her? Do you talk to her
yes,
still?
I do, and was it James Joyce, or not James Joyce, was it John O'Casey said, memory is the only friend that grief can call it, that one.
That's very true.
And I have a lot of great memories.
It had been an eventful 40 years, to say the least, but Ronnie and Deirdre had weathered the storms.
When she passed away, it was such a shock. I mean, she was diagnosed and gone within 7, 8, 9 weeks. So it wasn't a question of, oh, you know, I'm devastated, I can't pick myself up off the floor. It was shock. And then, you know, it takes quite a while to come through that shock, and then you're faced with the appalling kind of wasteland in front of you and how to pick up the pieces. And it just so happened that he was very ill at the time, and I suppose that was a distraction of sorts, that he was having to cope with his own kind of possible end, you know.
Ronnie was already seriously ill at the time of Deirdre's death.
I was having trouble with my throat. So I went to a throat doctor, and he looked down and said, yeah, there's something there. And the next thing I found out, I had throat cancer. And
what, were you stoic about that as well?
No, I wasn't stoic. You know, first is terror, and then fright, and then kind of acceptance, you know.
And what did you say to yourself? This is it, well, shag it, I've had it now.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I thought this is it, you know what I mean? But then I am 73, so I'd like to make the 80. But if I don't, I don't.
You know, of course, you lose the Barnet and the beard.
Yeah.
And I've never seen you in your togs, so I can't comment on the rest of it. Did you care about that?
I did, actually. I felt very self-conscious, yeah. Yeah, I felt very self-conscious because I've been so used to having a beard and hair for like all those years, you know.
You were like a gremlin, the lot of you.
You know, so that, you know, I really did. I felt, you know, kind of, you know, very vulnerable, yeah, you know.
But you've got a look of it, sir. You've sort of an East End gangster sort of a thing going on now. It's a different look.
A different look, yeah, very much a different look.
Here's to you, Ronnie Drew.
And as usual, the drinks are on Ronnie.
Some of Ireland's leading musicians decided that they wanted to pay a special tribute to Ronnie's life and career.
Here's to the Ronnie, the voice we adore, like coals from a coal bucket, scraping the floor. Sing out his praises in music and malts. And if you're not Irish, that isn't your fault.
Ballad Ronnie Drew was supposed to be a song for Ronnie Drew to sing.
The composer of the tribute song got confused by the message on his answering machine.
And he misheard the message. on his answering machine, and he thought it was write a song about Ronnie Drew rather than write a song for Ronnie Drew. So then he sent back a song about Ronnie Drew, and we thought, well, that's not what we were looking for. We wanted a song for Ronnie Drew to sing. And we thought, you know, he's ill. Why don't we record this and maybe it'll cheer him up?
The Ballad of Ronnie Drew was eventually performed in front of Ronnie on The Late Late Show.
He was absolutely overawed by the whole exercise.
Once again, the range of Ronnie's appeal was evident by those who wished to pay tribute to him. His fundamental credibility as an artist and as an individual has remained intact with new generations of Irish musicians.
A statue of Ronnie Drew holding the hand of a girl with her hair in a black velvet band.
He was absolutely delighted that, I suppose at a time when he was at his weakest, he needed that sort of feeling of a sort of a metaphorical hug or whatever, you know.
I'm really knocked out and I'm so honoured and so gratified. And I don't really think I deserve it, but I'm going to take the credit out of it anyway.
There are many different strands of music in Ireland today, and most of them were there that night for Ronnie Drew. Ronnie died on the 10th of August, 2008. John Sheehan and Barney McKenna are now the last surviving members of the original, and some would say, the definitive Dubliners.
What's the last thing you said to him, Shane?
Something like, you know, best I don't really see you later, you know. And, you know, like, you know, so don't get full or something.
No better place, I suppose, to be than when he died. I was in Croke Park with 50,000 plus stubs on a miserable day. And the word came in, you know, early on in that match that Ronnie Drew had died. There was no question about, you know, who, what, why, where. I mean, everybody was, oh, sorry, Ronnie Drew was dead. Everybody knew him.
Ronnie may be dead, but I have a feeling that his music will last, that stories about him will continue to be told, and that the grit and integrity of his character will never be forgotten. We spoke amongst ourselves in the office about things that you've done and things that you've spoken and said and sung that have moved us. And there was a general conclusion that the old triangle was one that can still make the hairs stand up on the back of people's neck. Can you remember the words?
Oh, you can, yeah. Oh, hungry feeling came on me stealing, and the mice were squealing in me prison cell, and the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. To begin the morning, the screw was bawling, get up your bowsy and clean up your cell. And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. There the screw was peeping as the lag lay sleeping, dreaming about his girl Sal. Then the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Up in the female prison there are 75 women, and among them now I wish I did dwell. Then that old triangle could go jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. All along the banks of the Royal Canal. Afraid the voice is a bit ropey, but there you are.